Okay, so in this video, I'm just going to go over the basics of what you would need to do to bring your own data into Provis, since I assume that might be the next step for a lot of people is to start working with their own data. So I'm going to start, I have Provis open here, and I'm just going to go to this file drop-down menu and click Create Empty Project. I'm going to create a new folder here and call it My Project. I'm going to select the folder. And then when I go in there, I can see it's been populated with a bunch of subdirectories and then a project file, text file here. And so I'll go through each of those subdirectories and just explain what they are. And then I'll show you what you would actually have to do in order to bring your data into Provis. So I'm just going to back out here and go to the pre-existing synthetic project that you were given. So I'm just going to delete some of these things that don't need to be here. So I'll start at the top here. The additional objects folder is where you would go if you had any surface that you would want to bring in and be rendered in the Provis viewport that's in the format of a CSV with XYZ coordinates. So you can see it's just a very simple CSV expected formatting. So if there was something you wanted to bring into Provis just to view in the same viewer, then you could do that. The conductor cache has a bunch of subdirectories here for each conductor in the project, and it saves basically all the previous states of the conductor. So you can see if I open one of these, it's a CSV file. And at the top here, we have the type of conductor, which is a ribbon, the name, the conductance. This essentially dictates the color of the ribbon and the canvas. And then this is where the actual shape and location of the canvas and the ribbons are stored. So Polyline 3D is the canvas coordinates that define the edge of the canvas. And then Polyline 2D, these coordinates are the edges of the ribbon and where they are lying relative to the canvas. So that's how the ribbon conductor is stored. That's the format of the CSV file. So under that, debug files is like an internal troubleshooting type thing. Fake data in this case is where we have dumped the temp files that we want to bring in. So this is like a user created folder, and they put all their temp files in here to keep the project clean. Loop library, under the loop library, we have where Provis stores the transmitter loops that it reads in from the temp files. And you can see it's stored in just a plain text file with the XYZ coordinates of the loop. So under that, we have the Provis conductors folder. And this is essentially where Provis reads in and saves conductors. So in this case, we just have ribbon conductors here, but plate conductors will be here as well. And the plate conductors are just the same format as Maxwell.pte files. Under this is the Provis options folder, and this is an important one that you'll be using a lot. So I mentioned previously, Provis expects your temp file to have some pointer to the transmitter waveform information and the channel sampling. And so this is where those files are stored and where Provis looks for them. So if I go into the waveforms folder and open one of these, you can see the expected format of the transmitter waveform information. So we have the name, we have the base frequency, the zero time, and then we have the time and the current of the transmitter pulse. And so this is where Provis would go to look for the transmitter waveform information if you passed it the name here in the header of your TEM. So it's very important. And channel sampling, if I go in here and open one of these, we can take a look at the expected format. So again, name, and then the start and end of the primary time gate. And then we have the channel name, start and end of the time gate. And then these numbers at the end tell Provis essentially what color to plot this given time channel in the plotting window. So you'll probably end up, if you have the need to bring in your own channel sampling scheme, you'll probably end up editing one of these existing files. And so hopefully now you know the expected format a bit better, so that can be a easy process for you. So under the options folder, we have Provis Synthetic, which is where you would go to put any synthetic data that you've created in the form of a .csv file. Under that, we have simulation results, and this essentially Provis keeps a log of all the simulations that were run for a given session. And if we open one of these up, we can see we have the simulation name, the date and time that it was performed, the holes that were included in the simulation, and we have the conductors that were included in the simulation. Under simulation results, we have TEM exports. And so this folder is where Provis actually saves the calculated responses for all the simulations that you've run. So if I open this, it'll just be in the format of a TEM file here. And you'll note that the naming convention is the data profile and then the date and time that the simulation was run. So you could cross-reference these files with the files in the simulation results and see what conductors were included to get that response that you have in the TEM file there. And so this TEM imports is just a user-generated folder, so I'm just going to get rid of that. So the project file, if I open this, you can see it's just a plain text file, and it consists of your project name, and then under that, this is how we actually point Provis to the data that we want to bring in. And so what it is here is this part right here, this fake /data/ is just pointing Provis where to look for the TEM files. So in this case, it's in the fake_data folder, which we've made and put all our TEM files in. And then following that, we have the name of the TEM file. So, .tem. And then we have a comma. And then following the comma is very important. It's the data file style. So Provis needs this string following the comma to know what type of data it's expecting, so it can be read in properly, can be imported properly. So in this case, the suffix here after data file style is SEM because that's the system that the data was collected with originally before it was completely changed to be synthetic data. But so Provis has a bunch of data loggers implemented currently. It has SJ. So you can see here, these are some of the data file styles. So SJ, Lamontagne, DigiAtlantis, and also Cron has been implemented. So you would make sure to replace this with the string that's appropriate for the type of data that you're bringing in. And if the type of data you're working with isn't supported yet, then just let Ben know, and a data importer can be made fairly quickly for whatever type of data you're working with. So if I go to this fake data folder where all our TEM files are, and I'm just going to open one of these up here. So there's a couple important things, and they're all contained in the header pretty much. So I'll see if I can zoom in a bit. So importantly, we have the base frequency, the line number, the current, the loop. But if we scroll all the way to the right here, so here, these two strings contained in the header obviously won't be present in the .tem files that you have now. So this is required. It's required that you add both the waveform and the sampling to the header file of your TEM so that Provis knows what transmitter waveform and channel sampling files to associate with the data profile so it can be brought in correctly. So that's a really key point, is to make sure that you add these to all the TEM files that you're importing, and to make sure that if you go into the Provis options and the waveform and the channel sampling, that there is some file corresponding to the name that you put in here that describes your transmitter waveform and your channel sampling in the format that I showed earlier. So that's really important. Again, the waveform and channel sampling are being pulled from here, and you won't be able to bring your data in unless you populate this in your header and have these files in the Provis options folder. And then finally, you'll note that if you load your project, so I'm just going to go ahead and load here, this one. So when you load your project for the first time and you go back to where your data is stored, you'll see that Provis has populated this folder with essentially a duplicate version of all the temp files that you had in here, but the name is starting with an underscore here. And so Provis basically generates like a duplicate version of the temp file with that underscore, and this is what is actually being operated on in Provis. So it's sort of like a so if you ever are trying to change something in your temp file, so like let's say I loaded up that project and I realized I made a mistake and I need to change something in the header of my temp file. So if you go in and do that and then save, you need to make sure that you're deleting the corresponding file with the underscore before it, because this is what Provis is going to be looking at once it's been read in for the first time. So if you need to make a change to one of these files, you need to make sure that you delete the corresponding file with the underscore so that Provis can reread in that profile and register the changes that you actually made to it. So that's it for this short video here. Hopefully that might make things a little bit easier when you're trying to get your own project with your own data up and running in Provis. And don't hesitate to reach out with any questions or anything. So